Hey everybody, it's Rockula and welcome back to Rockula Retrospective. This is day 13 of my VEDA series, 30 Bands in 30 Days. VEDA stands for Vlog Every Day in April, and today's artist is Gary Numan. It's Friday night in 1979, and 11-year-old Rockula is at the skating rink checking out the girls. This warbling sound comes over the speakers, and the girls squeal and start shaking their Jordache jeans. That song was Cars by Gary Numan, and I had no idea how much I would identify with his music. I soon got the album The Pleasure Principle, and my appreciation of Gary Numan began. It didn't take long for me to identify with the isolation that Numan portrayed in his songs. Complex and Me especially hit home by talking about maintaining a distance from others out of necessity. Next came Telecon, which I bought at the cutout bin at Target. This was even more cold and isolated sounding than the previous album. I Dream of Wires, Remember I Was Vapor, and Please Push No More resonated with me as I lay on my bed in the dark, wondering why the girls didn't like me and the guys didn't accept me. His music was soothing and womb-like. The cutout bin at Target yielded yet another Numan album. I Assassin was as dark as the other albums, but it didn't have the same lyrical content. It was also funkier and more dance-oriented than the previous albums, but I liked it nonetheless. As a side note, I believe that one of the things I appreciated the most on this album was the bass playing by Pino Palladino. White Boys and Heroes is a good song, but the fretless bass on 1930s Rust is what makes it my favorite song. I picked up the box set Living Ornament 7980 at Bill's Records and really started to appreciate the fact that Numan altered his songs for live performances. I actually prefer some of these live versions like Every Day I Die and Down in the Park. Speaking of the live version of Down in the Park, it was featured in the film A Music War. I must have watched that film a million times. Now that I'm a good way into this series, I'm starting to realize that I picked up a lot of good music from Steve Johnson when I lived at the Stone House on Bernard and Eagle in Denton. He made me a tape of the early Numan material, which documents his transition from punk to new wave. It prepared me for my next discovery of the Numan catalog in the early 90s. I was working for a food delivery service in Addison, Texas, and stopped into a used CD store during a break. That's where I found several Gary Numan imported CDs. Each contained 2 albums and a ton of bonus tracks. This is where I got introduced to the albums Tubeway Army and Replicas. There were a few tracks that had been featured on the punk compilation, but they had been rewritten as new wave. Tubeway Army still has some punk influences, but the shift really seemed to happen with Replicas. The opening tracks, Me I Disconnect From You and Our Friends Electric, have to be some of the loneliest songs I've ever heard. Gary talks about the period after Telecon where he began to lose his popularity. He second-guessed himself and made a lot of music that I didn't really care for, but that didn't diminish the impact he had on my development. Numan pretty much falls off the radar until people like Trent Reznor start gushing about how important he was to the modern crop of electronic musicians. He also starts up a relationship with his future wife, Gemma, who convinced him to quit trying to distance himself from the original qualities that made people love him in the first place. He abandoned his aspirations of being taken more seriously as a musician and got back to his dark and brooding roots. Numan reinvents himself and adopts a modern goth electronic direction. He puts out a series of albums that capitalize on his newfound elder statesman status. He also finds out what caused all of his emotional and mental distancing. Numan is diagnosed with Asperger's, and now everything makes perfect sense. He also finds out that he not only has influenced his direct descendants, like Nine Inch Nails and Marilyn Manson, but hip-hop artists like the Beastie Boys and Africa Bambaataa start to reference Numan in their own music. Numan has always been slagged off as a second-rate Kraftwerk ripoff, but you have to acknowledge that he is on the same list as Kraftwerk when it comes to sphere of influence. I have been fortunate enough to see Numan live on several occasions and was even lucky enough to be at the front of the stage at the Tiny Galaxy Club show where he posed with me for a snapshot. The thing that separates Numan from all of the new wave robot Devo clones of his day was that, while everybody else was trying to act like a human turning into a machine, he went the opposite direction and programmed his emotions into the machine in order to make it sound more human. I'd like to hear your thoughts and opinions on Gary Numan in the comments below, and I'd love it if you liked, subscribed, and shared. Thanks for watching day 13 of my VEDA series, 30 Bands in 30 Days. We're going to take a serious shift in focus with tomorrow's band, Iron Maiden. I'm Rockula, and this is Rockula Retrospective.